In the north of England sits Hyde, a quiet, unremarkable town in Greater Manchester. Red brick terraced houses, narrow streets, a community where neighbors knew each other by name. It was exactly the kind of place where people trusted their doctor. And for decades, one doctor in Hyde was trusted above all others, Harold Frederick Shipman, known to his patients simply as Fred. He ran a single-handed GP practice on Market Street. He was known for making home visits, something rare for a doctor of his era. Patients adored him. Elderly women in particular described him as caring, thorough, attentive. No one questioned him. That was the problem. Harold Shipman was born in Nottingham in 1946. His childhood was shaped by one defining event. His mother, Vera, was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer when Harold was a teenager. He watched her suffer, and he watched her doctor administer morphine injections in her final weeks, the only thing that gave her relief. She died when Harold was 17. That image, a doctor, a needle, a patient at peace, never left him. He went on to study medicine at Leeds University. He qualified as a GP in the early 1970s and began his career in Todmorden, West Yorkshire. But in 1975, something happened that should have ended everything. Shipman was caught forging prescriptions for pethidine, a powerful opioid painkiller for his own personal use. He was fined and briefly attended a drug rehabilitation clinic, and then, incredibly, he was allowed to continue practicing medicine. Shipman's method was precise, calculated, and completely hidden in plain sight. His victims were almost exclusively elderly women, patients who trusted him completely, women who lived alone, women whose deaths would not immediately raise suspicion. He would visit them at home, often unannounced or under the pretense of a routine check. He administered lethal doses of diamorphine, medical heroin, by injection. The dose was massive, far beyond anything therapeutic. Death came quickly. Patients were found sitting in chairs or lying on their beds, looking, in many cases, entirely peaceful. Shipman would then falsify their medical records, backdating entries to suggest the patient had been in declining health for weeks before the visit. He would contact the family, express condolences. Sometimes he would sign the death certificate himself. Everything looked natural. Everything looked expected. Everything looked like the quiet death of an old woman who had simply run out of time. For over 2 decades, Harold Shipman killed. The true scale was staggering, and the fact that it continued for so long was not an accident. It was a systemic failure. Local funeral directors began to notice something uncomfortable. One director, Alan Massey, observed that Shipman's patients died at an unusual rate, and almost always during or shortly after one of his visits. His daughter Debbie raised the concern formally in 1997. A local GP, Dr. Linda Reynolds, also reported her concerns to the coroner that same year, noting the unusually high death rate among Shipman's patients. The coroner referred the matter to the police. The police investigated and found nothing conclusive. They closed the case. Shipman continued. On the 24th of June, 1998, Shipman visited Kathleen Grundy, a former mayor of Hyde, 81 years old, fit and active by all accounts, a woman well known and respected in the community. She was found dead at her home hours later. Shipman signed the death certificate. He attributed her death to old age. But Kathleen Grundy's daughter, Angela Woodruff, a solicitor, grew suspicious almost immediately. A will had appeared, a crudely typed document that claimed to leave Kathleen's entire estate worth around £386,000 to Harold Shipman. Angela Woodruff knew her mother. She knew her mother's real will. She knew this document was wrong. She went to the police. This time, they listened. Police exhumed the body of Kathleen Grundy in August 1998. Toxicology confirmed it immediately, a fatal dose of diamorphine. Detectives began pulling Shipman's patient files. Then they began exhuming more bodies. The results were the same, again and again. Diamorphine, fatal levels, in patients whose deaths had been signed off as natural. On the 24th of September 1998, Harold Shipman was arrested at his surgery. He remained calm. He denied everything. He believed he would not be convicted. The trial of Harold Shipman began in October 1999 at Preston Crown Court. He was charged with 15 counts of murder, a fraction of the true number, but the cases for which evidence was strongest. The prosecution presented falsified medical records, toxicology results, and the fraudulent will. Shipman defended himself as a dedicated doctor. He showed no remorse, no emotion. On the 31st of January 2000, the jury found him guilty on all 15 counts. He was sentenced to life imprisonment, the judge recommending he never be released. But the story did not end there. Following his conviction, the British government launched a full public inquiry, the Shipman Inquiry, led by Dame Smith. The findings were devastating. The inquiry concluded that Harold Shipman almost certainly killed 250 patients, possibly more, over a period of 23 years, beginning as early as 1975. He's the most prolific convicted serial killer in British history, possibly in all of modern recorded history. The inquiry also delivered a brutal verdict on the systems that failed: the prescription monitoring, the death certification process, the police investigation of 1997, all of it inadequate. Reforms to the death certification system in England and Wales were directly traced to the Shipman case. On the 13th of January 2004, one day before his 58th birthday, Harold Shipman was found hanged in his cell at Wakefield Prison. He left no confession, no explanation, no final statement. The true number of his victims has never been confirmed with absolute certainty. The motive was never fully understood. Some investigators pointed to the memory of his mother, the morphine, the control, the power over the moment of death. Others found no satisfying explanation at all. What remains is this: a quiet town in northern England, a doctor his patients trusted completely, and somewhere between 250 and 300 people who went to sleep and did not wake up. Their names are remembered. His legacy is the system that now exists to make sure it cannot happen again.